Hello everyone, this is ponderonweather. In this update, we have a rather unusual weather pattern developing as something odd takes shape in the coming week going into next week. Welcome back everyone. How's it going out there? This is your morning update. Hey, I appreciate all my followers out there and new followers. If you are new to the channel and you do like detailed weather breakdowns on North America and the tropics, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it this morning on the satellite picture. And you can definitely see we've got all this clearing out west. Complements of this ridge of high pressure are going to be developing and really intensifying, bringing some record heat out west. We had all those storms that blew through Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan yesterday. Now that same system is right along this area right here into the mid-Atlantic states, while the Gulf of Mexico is starting to open up for business, bringing tropical type rain showers down here into Texas, back here into the deep south, as the monsoon flow takes a break and it really starts to shut down with this ridge of high pressure out here into the west. That's really going to be amplifying in the coming days. So let's take a look at the overall storm reports yesterday, because there was a lot of them. This was actually, I would say, the most widespread impactful event we've actually seen all summer, with that enhanced risk for severe weather in place, and really a lot of high wind reports, up to actually 339 yesterday, kind of draped across, with the highest impact areas right here in northern Illinois, back here into northern Indiana, as well as into Michigan. So all these storm reports were really draped across this shortwave system, this upper level low that really was packing a punch, moving across. And some of these wind gusts maxed out. Some of the highest ones were back here in 81 miles an hour back here into portions of Indiana, as well as another 78 mile per hour wind gust. So there was definitely wind reports over hurricane force strength wind gusts yesterday, as these knocked out a lot of power outages. And at times there was upwards almost 600,000 customers without power in the state of Michigan there, with numerous reports that came across Illinois. Then later on in the evening, those outages were over Indiana, Ohio, back into Pennsylvania. But it's a lot better this morning. But last night there were a lot of people that were knocked out with power, with all those high winds that took shape across those areas. So luckily for today, things have settled down, but really it's all about the dew points, as the tropical type air mass is really starting to open up for business. So if we take a look at the overall dew points later on this afternoon, typically your kind of magic numbers around 55, right? So you really have to have about a 55-degree dew point to kind of squeeze out any precipitation in the atmosphere. And you can definitely see all this brown shaded area, that's lower than 55, right? So it's going to be hard pressed to rain any type of precipitation out here. The precipitation really kind of swings across, and now that same upper level trough will be over portions of the mid-Atlantic, headed into portions of the Northeast, where some of the dew points are in the upper 60s. But notice down south, down into the purple shaded areas, look at that. This is something we haven't seen. This is a pretty muggy air mass. If you live down in Texas and Louisiana, Mississippi, you kind of know what I'm talking about. You step outside and you feel like a wet blanket. 72, 75 degrees, that tells you the atmosphere has a lot of moisture content in it, right? So it doesn't take much to wring out. All you have to have is some sort of lift in the atmosphere, and you're going to be getting that with subtle little vorticities down there into Texas to bring more heavy rainfall. So it's actually shifted out of Oklahoma, and now it's really taken a shape over portions further south into Texas and Louisiana. And it's all really complements of these little vorticities, right? So we have these subtle movements, these pulses of energy in the atmosphere. So with this ridge of high pressure really kind of locked over portions of the west and further north, it's a lot of sinking air in that type of air mass. There's really no rain to speak of. It all gets forced and compressed further south. So it's kind of unusual to see this little low-level swirl out here into portions of the deserts, and even El Paso. This area is only, you get about an average rainfall about 10 inches for the entire year. And they're getting some heavier rainfalls today as we have another system, this more little vorticity down here in portions of Houston and to central Texas, bringing very heavy rain. But you can see where the cold front is, right? You could this little draped across the boundary, just right along the Red River, draped across portions of Louisiana, draped across portions of the Deep South. That extends all the way and eventually head out into the Atlantic. And then you have this trough that brought all the severe weather over here, portions of the back into Illinois and Indiana and Michigan yesterday. Now that has shifted further off into portions of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. But further south, like I mentioned, the Gulf of Mexico is open up for business. So it really doesn't take much. You got a little vorticity in the atmosphere. You got the lift. You got the moisture in place. So boom, you get 2 to 4 inches rainfall rates at times, sending in portions of Houston Metroplex back into central Texas, East Texas. That seems to be kind of the bullseye today, where some of these rainfall rates of 2, maybe 3 inches per hour at times is definitely not out of the question. With the amount of intensity, the level of reaching, climatologically speaking, 90-95% for this time of year. So yeah, flash flooding is definitely a concern if you're trapped under these just tropical type downpours. So nothing severe out of that. These are just like tropical type heavy downpours at times, causing flash flooding in its wake if it's locked over your area. So further to the north, it's about the severe stuff. Just a marginal risk, not nearly as intense as what we saw yesterday. So things have calmed down in a big way for sure. But those storms will be racing across, will be draped across again. Damaging winds, this time upwards to 50, 60 miles an hour. Nothing to the intensity yesterday. No 70s, no 75s, no 80-mile-per-hour wind points reports happening today. These are all on the smaller variety side, but some of those could be on the marginal side, could bump up to severe level strengths. That's why the Storm Prediction Center has that marginal risk in place as these storms kind of race across. But yeah, further to the south, it's really all about where these little vorticities take place. You got the moisture. You got plenty of moisture, pumping in from the Gulf of Mexico. But the main lift as you go into Wednesday is going to be out here in portions of West Texas, far South Texas, and then draped across into portions of Florida, while you're still dealing with that one system that's up here that's going to bring the severe weather today, going to be finally moving out and dumping some heavier rains in the state of Maine by the time we get into your Wednesday time frame. And then Thursday, that little system that's over portions of deep far West Texas will be coming back. It actually gets pulled back, and that's fairly unusual again. So it gets pulled back, mainly portions of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex into central Texas, and now that will shift that piece of energy back over portions of the Houston Metroplex, San Antonio, Austin, Waco. Those areas will get hard with heavy tropical type downpours, and then again draped across far deep south into portions of Florida. So why is all this happening, right? So let's take a look at the overall teleconnections well up north, right? So this is your P&A, this is your Pacific North American. Whenever you see it positive like this, right, and it's pretty amplified, it's pretty positive, that just gives you an indication where the ridge of high pressure will be really lifting well up into Canada, bringing all the high pressure sinking air, if not record heat, coming for a good chunk of the West, the Pacific Northwest, parts of Canada, really the western 2/3 of the US. We're experiencing well above average temperatures really for the next 7 to 10 days. That pattern really doesn't go anywhere. So we kind of get locked, right? We kind of get locked in this overall pattern coming up for the next 7 to 10 days. And look at the overall temperature anomalies. And this is rather unusual, right? So with that type of system, that type of setup in place, we've got a lot of heat coming for California, much of the Pacific Northwest, much of Canada. We got well above average temperatures. The ridge slowly builds over time and will slowly shift into portions of the eastern 2/3 of the US, while everything gets kind of landlocked further south, where you have all the instabilities, those little vorticities in place. And this is definitely rather unusual for the next 7 to 10 days. your lowest temperature anomalies on average is in Mexico, of all places. So you're going to get your most below average temperatures in essentially Mexico. So that is definitely unusual. And why would all this happen in over the next 7 to 10 days? So let's break this down because we got a lot of heat to talk about. With that positive, P&A really locked in place, unfortunately, that is going to be bringing some serious heat on the table. So it starts building over time. These are the record high temperatures, could be up to 15 of them draped across portions of California, where all you see these little circles at. That's where you're seeing a possible record high temperature for a good chunk of the Pacific Northwest, while much of the country today gets draped across this little trough. And on the backside, you've got pretty nice conditions on the backside of this. So enjoy the 70s up here in Minnesota and much of Wisconsin, back into Michigan, getting into parts of the Ohio Valley. And then as we go into tomorrow, that heat just cranks up even higher. Now we're talking up to 27 record high temperatures, again, draped across the west. A lot of circles on the map. You got the cooler conditions a little bit moving a little bit further off into the mid-Atlantic states, heading up into Maine, where they're going to be getting some of that heavier rain showers. So temperatures in the 70s up there, draped across further south. It's all about the mugginess, right? You got low 90s for actual temperatures, but you're just going to be locked into a kind of a tropical type air mass, really for the rest of the week for portions, a good chunk of the southeast and the deep south. As we go into Thursday, kind of the same deal. More record high temperatures out west. You can definitely see the overall pattern really doesn't go anywhere. You kind of get locked on Friday. Same deal. Out west, boom, plenty of record heat. Any type of cooler conditions, more like fall type conditions, are well north. But as the ridge will start to build further off, hey, 75 degrees all day long, that's a pretty good day, right? But further to the south, we're not looking at any intense heat or anything like that. All the heat really gets dropped into a good chunk out to the west. We go into the weekend, I think the heat just cranks up even higher. Look at that, maxing out at 126 degrees, potentially in, say, Death Valley area. So yeah, plenty of heat, widespread record heat. Numerous records are going to be falling really all throughout the week, and that just goes into the weekend. And I think you really start to top out as far as temperatures go for your Sunday, where Los Angeles could be well into the hundreds, if not 105 degrees out there. So definitely some dangerous stuff. They've got numerous excessive heat watches and warnings out here, and these will just be draped across a good chunk out the west. With that positive P&A, that ridge is not going anywhere anytime soon, as we just get kind of locked in this overall pattern going forward. And then even into Monday, heading into early part of next week, again, kind of the same deal. It doesn't really go anywhere. This just overall pattern really starts to just get locked with the little bit subtle cooler conditions out here well to the north. And then, overall further to the south, it's really just about at the tropical type air mass where all this convergent really starts to take place. There's not much precipitation up here, so it's got to go somewhere. So let's take a look at the tropics, right? So out here in the eastern Pacific, it's been really active. It's been really active all season long, technically, and out in the Atlantic, it's been very. We've only had 3 storms, right? So going forward for the week ahead, we've got yet another system going to be developing right now that have a 60% chance of developing in the coming days, heading again up here to the Baja of California, while we have this other little swirl back behind it. That looks to be the subtle pieces of moisture, the remnants of whatever this little system that was out here into the portions of the Caribbean will eventually start to shift over and cross over onto the Pacific side. So if we move forward going into this weekend, that one system that has that 60% chance, it looks to develop into another tropical system, bringing right along the coast. These waters are really warm out here. It kind of feeds and trains off those warmer waters. That will bring, again, more heavy precipitation back into the Baja of California, and that will swing across back into the portions of the desert Southwest, but really over Texas, specifically, say, West Texas. As yet, yes, there's that other little system that will be swinging over into the eastern Pacific side, starting to get its act together. And I think by the middle of next week, that actual system will become another tropical system that'll be near the Baja of California, Cabo San Lucas. If you got plans heading out there in the next 7 to 10 days, you need to watch this system, because it definitely appears you got one, if not two systems heading your way, spreading at least heavier rainfall. But then again, this system will be spreading more tropical type rains into Texas. So as it continues to move up, by the middle of next week, you've got this system pulling northward again. And then once it shifts north, you've got all the dryness, right? You got all the ridge. So there's not much precipitation out here. So it's got to go somewhere. You got to have the precipitation going somewhere, and it just gets locked further south. So again, we see areas into New Mexico, into Texas, as yet we have another system with a rather odd system taking shape with the coolest anomalies anywhere in the United States for the first part of September is going to be in Mexico and a good chunk of West Texas because of this overall setup over the next 7 to 10 days. So what does that look like as far as the precipitation goes? Not much, right? This is the precipitation really over the next 10 days with this high pressure locked over much of the west and much of the north. There's not much rain to speak of whatsoever. And then these systems come across. We have the system today over the Ohio Valley and parts of the Northeast. But again, these are just subtle systems. It's not really heavy rainfall. Really the highest rainfalls, and really just everything gets locked over a good chunk of Texas and Arkansas and Louisiana, with into Mississippi and Alabama, back into Florida, with the highest chances of heavier tropical type rains over the next 7 to 10 days. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update while I protect you before and after the storm.